Hi there. Today's video, we're going to cover how can we use VBA to select a specific item in a combo box. You're going to see this is very simple. My article covers this in great detail. I even show you how to replicate the coding and everything, how to start by creating the tables and inserting some data that I use later. And you'll see, as you can see here, the code is very simple. I have two cases. I have the simple case, which is non-normalized data. I know we're not supposed to have non-normalized data, but the reality is a lot of developers do, so I cover this case nonetheless. And then we move on here, the more advanced case, which is when your database is properly designed, your data is broken down properly, things are more complex. They're better organized, but the coding becomes slightly more complex, so I demonstrate how to do that as well. So let's just dive in. You can review the article, everything's there that you need. For this, I've created a very simple demo database. And like I said, on the website, it shows you how to create these tables. But just so you get a glance here, the simplified version is a single column in a table. That's it. So if we look at it, what it is I have a row with names of individuals. This could be anything, could be product names, could be, I don't know, age groups. It doesn't make a difference what the actual values and data is. It's just we have a single column of data and that's it. So if you look at this, we don't have a primary key. We don't have any of that. All we have is this. So let's look at it, how we're going to put this into a form. So what we're going to end up with is we'd end up with a combo box, let's say here, where they all get listed. So all I've done is I've bound the row source to the table directly. So very briefly, for those of you who want to see how that's done, under data, you have row source. And if I open it up very quickly, you'll see I've bound myself to that table. I'm pulling the only column here that we need, and I've applied a sort to it just to make it alphabetically sorted. It simplifies finding things. And then here it's bound to one column. The first column, this is the default value. I've changed nothing here. I've changed nothing here. You'll even notice I don't even have to specify the width of the columns. So it's just by default, this just will work. So let's look at this. If we open it up, and I can go and I can pick someone. And it's a standard combo box. Now, for various reasons, I'm using command buttons, but we all know this to be logic behind some type of process. But nonetheless, I want to set it. I don't want the user to do it. I want, through code, to set the value to John Smith. So there you go. I want to set it to Sophia Brown. There you go. So how do we set the value of a combo box? Well, if we go into the VBA, you're going to see in the case of the simplified, it's this simple. It's me dot the name of the control, so the name of the combo box, and then you say equals and what you want to bind to. That's it. So because we're only having one column, we're just telling it go and find the value in that column, in that control, that equals John Smith. Obviously, you put something there that isn't there, it's not going to manage to bind. But as long as you're putting a valid value, it works. So this works. I'm using it to actually set the value. You could also be using this to set the default value, which is typically more what we end up doing is we end up, if you go on a new record, you're going to want to have it perhaps a default value for, a status of a, project or status of products and things like that. So perhaps instead of just defaulting the value per se, maybe you're going to default the default value, because don't forget, the minute you touch the value, that data is going to be saved. But by changing, let's say, the default value, you can still input something initially, but it doesn't actually make a record right off the bat. So it depends on what we're trying to achieve here, but the technique is the same, right? All that's going to change here is we're going to then, let's say we wanted to do the default value, not the value. All you're going to do is take it and you're going to come here and you're going to say, oops, default value, and then you'd put the Sophia Brown, right? And this would be commented out. Now, I'm not currently in a setup with records. I'm not connected to a table. This isn't a bound form. It's just to demonstrate the combo box. But that's as simple as it would be to do. So let's move on to a more concrete example of typically what I'd expect to see in a properly designed database. Now, in a properly designed database, we're not going to have a single column. What we're going to end up with is something like this. So it's going to be a table with lots of columns of data, and that data is broken down by attribute. So last name, first name, whatever else information you want to put in there, it makes no difference. And what is actually important is the primary key. So the bind is going to be the primary key. It's this number. Even though we still want to go get, John Smith, in reality, the value of interest is 1. So with this in mind, then what happens when we look at the form, we have this, at a front appearances here initially it's the same form, but if we click now on the combo box, you now see that we've got multiple columns. And there could be even more, and we could even concatenate these together into one if we wanted. So there's all sorts of variations, but what you're not seeing is there's actually a column here that you're not seeing, which is the primary key. That number 1 for John Smith is actually here. It's just not visible to the user because it has no value to the user. But it is there in the combo box. So let's take a look at that. If we go into design view, go on this combo box, let's start off like we did last time with the row source. So what do I have as data going to that combo box? Well, now I'm connecting to the advanced table, makes sense. But now instead of just 1 column, I've got 3, and I could have more. So I've got that contact ID, like I said, that number, that primary key. It's there, it's not visible, but it is there, as you can see. And then here I put first name, last name. It could be inverse, it could be last name, first name. It could be concatenated together. I could put full name, and then I could put first name and put a space and put the last name. You could have the company name. You can have whatever data you want in that combo box. That's up to you. But just illustrating that we have the data here that is of value to the user, but here we're taking that primary key, that binding information that's actually important to us to be able to store it in records, because we don't store John Smith, we store 1. So then we've got the data coming into the combo box properly. Then we have to make sure we're binding to the right column. In this case, my primary key is the first column, so that's perfect. I don't need to adjust it. And then we come here, and now I'm saying there are 3 columns of data in that row source. And I'm setting that first one to 0. That's why it's hidden. It's not showing up because I said the width of that column is 0. I don't want it showing. And then you adjust the other columns as you see fits, and they display the entirety of the information. You can also check my website. I have a function that can auto size the columns if you wish. And the rest you just set as you want. So now we have, like I have shown you, a very simple combo box with the data properly normalized. That primary key is there even though we can't see it. So this is a properly set up combo box. But I still want to be able to go and set John Smith. But if I do what we did in the simplified version, it will not work. But as you can see, we can go get Sophia, John, etc. So how am I doing that? The important thing here to notice is I want John Smith. But if you see here, I'm clicking John Smith, it's actually pulling John Candy. And I'm doing this on purpose to illustrate one thing you have to understand. So let's look at the code behind John Smith. The code behind John Smith, so set John, is, as you can see here, what we're doing is we're going to take that combo box. I'm setting it to null. This is a choice. I'm basically blanking the control and then performing the search. So the value, the existing value doesn't stay there and people think that, oh, something occurred. It's a choice. You can choose to comment this out or not. It depends on how you want your form to act. But basically, I come down in the next line. We're going to go row by row in the combo box. And we're then going to look in the column for the value I'm searching for. So I made this a constant. I'm searching for John. And if it finds a row where the value of that column 1, now this is 0 based, so column 1 is actually the second column, because don't forget the first column is our primary key. Our second column, which is because it's 0 based, actually it's column 1. I know it's a little confusing, but column 1 will be the first names. Column 2 would be the last names. So since I'm searching for John, I'm searching for the first name. So the second column, which is index 1. So if it finds a match for John, then we set the value to that row, the binding column value in that row. And that's what item data will do. But as you can see, what it's doing is I'm only searching on John. So because of that, it finds John here and it stops. And this is just to illustrate that you have to add enough criteria to narrow down to just one row. And that's what Sophia Brown does. I can have as many Sophias as you want, but when I press that Sophia Brown, it goes to Sophia Brown. How am I doing that? It's the same basic principle, but now instead of just searching with one value, I'm searching by first name and last name. And that's why here we're going to concatenate just like we did above. But now in our if statement where we're doing our criteria search, we're going to check that second column, the first name, and we're going to check that third column, the last name. So we're searching Sophia and Brown. And then I'm binding. In this case, I chose to go a different route. Item data would work perfectly, but I'm this case using the index 0 column, the first column, which is the primary key. I'm getting the number, that 1 for John Smith. And I'm binding that to the value of the combo box. And that's all there is to it. And it works just fine. The key, like I say, is you have to give enough data, enough to create a criteria that is unique, that no other record can ever equate to. And then you get the action you want. Now, I also want to show you an alternative. Now, this is not an alternative that I recommend, okay? What I've shown here is what I do, okay? This is the approach I want. I'm going to take the active control and I'm going to use what is currently in memory on the screen. But I also know that sometimes this gets to be a little scary. There's a lot of code, and sometimes people just want simple. And this is another perfectly fine approach to doing the exact same thing. And in this case, instead of doing Sophia Brown, as you can see, I'm doing Sophia Jones. So what am I doing? Instead of looping through what's on screen, I'm using DLookUp to go look in the table, which is used as the source of the combo box. So I'm telling it, go into the table, contacts advanced, bring me back the contact ID, that primary key, where the first name, so find me the record where the first name is Sophia and the last name is Jones. So it's going to hopefully find that record, find the contact ID and return it as the value of the combo box. So now if I click on Sophia Brown, I know it's the button that says Sophia Brown, but we've changed it now to Sophia Jones. And you see there's nothing there because there is no Sophia Jones. So it's going to return null and it's going to effectively blank the control. If we come and we look, we have a Sophia AAA. So if we change that last name to AAA and we try again, it will work perfectly. And if we click on it, you will see we are in Sophia AAA. If I were to change that last name now to Brown and try it again, it will run and it's gone and taken Sophia Brown. And that's all there is to setting the value of a combo box, setting the default value of a combo box. I prefer and recommend going this route. And obviously you can turn this into a function where you supply the criteria and things like that to make it much more flexible and turn into a user-defined function that you can use on any form, things like that. But there is technically nothing wrong with this. As always, you want to try to minimize your use of DLookUps, but hey, if this is what you're comfortable with, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to stop here, and we'll see you in the next video. If you don't mind, like, share, subscribe, drop me a comment below. I know someone asked me specifically about how you can add a filter to the combo box search. These are defined values, right? We have a specific record we're looking for. Sometimes things aren't as cut and dry as that, right? Sometimes you want the user to be able to do some type of search, bring up all the Sophias, or bring me up, when we're talking about, let's say, products, let's say hardware things, like bring me up all the hammers and things like that. Well, I will do another video in not too long distance future here where I will show you how you can actually not just set a combo box, but actually, I guess, filter it down to reduce the amount of choices that a user can choose from and simplify, reduce scrolling and things like that. But for today, it was about binding to a specific value. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.